Hey Squishies, back again, another vlog. This is a Dirty Pair TV series, episode 2, Do Lovely Angels Like Chest Hair? Which is an interesting title. Fortunately, it's probably the most interesting thing about the episode. Which is not to say it was a bad episode exactly. It was just sort of there. It really just didn't have anything like... I think the biggest problem with it is it was taking itself seriously. The first episode was a bit of glorious, silly fun. And this is just sort of a thing that happens. Also, while the computer in the first episode didn't get a ton of characterization, the antagonists in this episode get none whatsoever. They are as faceless as the corporation they work for. So, what is there really to say about this one? I mean, there's the whole weird thing with the chest hair. Their new senior is kind of a jerk. He makes pretty clear that he doesn't want to be working with them and just brought them along so that they can do menial tasks that he can't, like checking the women's bathrooms. At the same time, that's not entirely unjustified because there was a ridiculous amount of collateral damage on their last mission, and that's I think the chief says something about how he would have preferred they not be sent on another mission at all, but the computer spat out their names as the appropriate people to go on this mission. I'd be interested to know more about that computer. I hope it comes up again. But regardless, there isn't that much here. I mean, I guess you could kind of spin out a thing where like the whole chest hair thing with their senior, where Kay says she doesn't like chest hair, and then later he, later when he's being a jerk, she says, oh, he definitely must have chest hair. And then later still, he reveals that he doesn't. And I guess you could read that a couple of ways. You could read it as just being like him demonstrating he doesn't have it and then accepting it is sort of a way of saying no. Him saying that, after the events of this episode, he actually cares whether they like him, and them saying, "Oh yeah, we do." Now, it's one possibility. Another is that, chest hair is representative of masculinity very often. So it could be Kay saying she doesn't like, macho men. She likes men who are, a little more, effeminate isn't the right word, but men who don't conform to gender stereotypes quite as much. And him at the end saying, well, I'm not quite the arrogant masculine authority figure that you think I am. See, I have no chest hair. Or it could be that, growing chest hair is a thing that happens in puberty, signifying, growing up, adulthood. Kay could be saying that she doesn't like, adults in the, she and Yuri are adults, but they're quite young. So it could be one of those, never trust anyone over 25 things. And then at the end, it's him saying, "You see, I'm not as adult as you think I am, or I'm not as untrustworthy as you think I am." Because the thing with that kind of generational conflict is that it's really easy to go way too far with it. I mean, there is some truth to the idea that as culture changes over time, people grow up in different cultural environments and therefore come out different in a cultural way. Like, somebody who was born in the 80s or 90s grew up in a very different cultural environment than somebody who grew up in, say, the 50s or the 60s. And so there are, unsurprisingly, essentially cultural differences. Attitudinal differences and differences in, propensities for certain kinds of skills and that kind of thing. Not innate and not universal, but tendencies. Like, people who grew up in the 90s or later, there's a tendency for them to be particularly good at rapid skill acquisition, which is why, and there's a tendency for people who grew up in, 50s and 60s to not be as good at rapid skill acquisition. There are other skills which vary in other ways, but that's why your grandma thinks you're good with computers when you're not, because you can Google how to do something with the computer and find the answer and do it. And she doesn't have the experience of doing that. Now, I say that, but it's entirely possible that your grandma helped invent the computer and is amazingly good with them. Like I said, it's not universal, it's tendencies. And so saying, like, don't trust anyone over 25, or that kind of saying, our country's in the mess that it's in because baby boomers are the worst. No. See, there you're crossing a bit of a line, because that's taking somebody who's essentially from a subtly different culture than you and saying our culture is, our country is in bad shape because that culture is terrible. And that's going a little far. I think, because that's blaming huge swaths of people for the actions of ultimately a few. Yeah, okay. The culture that baby boomers grew up in was kind of the worst, but so is the culture we all grew up in, and so is the culture we live in now. Because our culture is garbage. That's why we have to continually criticize and examine and attempt to improve it. That said, I can see Kane Yuri not trusting him, because he is clearly not only older than them, but definitely expressing much more conservative attitudes than them. He's very much got, these traditionalist male, the girls can be set off to do the girl work. All the serious work has to be done by the man. And they prove him thoroughly wrong, and to his credit, he accepts it and relies on them in the climax when he's, wounded. Yeah. Not really a ton to say about this one. I hope the rest are better. From what I've heard from other people, the rest are better. This is just, like I said, not a bad episode, but kind of definitely hoping for something more exciting and interesting and fun. I hope they get over this phase of taking themselves seriously, because that is a deadly mistake for almost any form of entertainment. Or really anything else. You basically just never want to take yourself seriously if you're trying to create anything at all. Yeah. That's about it. See y'all next time. Bye.